morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night. Thank you for joining the Spiritist Talk series promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm very happy to be here today to host this talk by Dr. Vicente Pessoa, who will be leading our live with the theme, The Spirit's Journey to Perfectibility. I would like to take a brief moment for some announcements. On September 30th, the United States Spiritist Federation hosted the 17th U.S. Spiritist Symposium with a primary focus on the theme, the spiritual path to mental balance. If you haven't had the opportunity to watch the event yet, I invite you to visit the USSF YouTube channel or the International panels, then the Q&A. Workshop 2023 on October 13 to 15. The event will be held on Zoom in Portuguese, and the activities on Friday and Sunday will be translated into English and French. Again, the North American Spiritist Educators Workshop on October 13 to 15. You can find more information also on the United States Spiritist Federation website. The USSF is bringing a podcast-like series, Psychology and Spirituality, A Bridge to a Better Life, based on the works of Joana de Angelis, a new episode every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The weekly talks are based on the works of Joana de Angelis and will offer safe space to confront, compare, correlate, and expand spirituality concepts from a psychological lens, bringing insights, actionable tips, and real-world advice to help you lead a better life. Subscribe to receive the notifications of new episodes at the USSF YouTube channel. Also, on the screen, please note that there is a QR code. If you want to help the United States Spiritist Federation to produce more publications and promote Spiritism to everyone, please scan the code for your donation. Now, back to Dr. Vicente Pessoa. It is so good to have you with us here today. I think everyone who is watching this live broadcast is very anxious to see the talk that you are presenting, so I want to give you a very warm welcome. But before he starts, let me formally introduce him. Dr. Vicente Pessoa, MD, is an infectious disease physician and is currently the Vice President of the Spiritist Medical Association of Goiania. Please take this opportunity to send your questions during the presentation using the chat window. We have reserved time to address your comments and questions once Dr. Vicente Pessoa concludes his presentation. Dr. Pessoa is with you.
Thank you very much, João. I am always very happy when I'm here with you guys from the United States Spirit Federation. I would like to salute Jussara as well, Ricardo, Daniel, and all friends from the United States Spirits Federation. And we are going to talk about the Spirit's journey to perfectibility. So if you could put my slides on, please. Thank you very much. So it's a journey, and every journey starts or begins with the first step. And when we talk about journeys, we bring the notion of time. It's something that happens during a period of time. There is the first step, and there is this idea of transformation, modification, evolution through time. So it's very important, the idea of time, when we talk about journeys. But what exactly is time? We actually don't know yet. Scientists have been studying time, and they could not come up with a definition yet. We don't understand time completely yet. We don't even know if time follows a process that moves forward. We have no guarantees that time follow this process, that it moves only forward. Maybe time can move backwards, or maybe it can move forward. So we have some very important scientists that had studied time, and one of them was the great Albert Einstein. And he postulated in his equations that if you are able to travel very, very fast, you can slow down time. This is part of his relativity theory, and it's been used even by Hollywood in movies, so we can understand it better. There are a lot of books written about time, and there are people that even believe that time is God Himself, is God itself. So we kind of do not understand time completely. And we bring this idea that time is actually relative. This Einstein's theory brings us this idea that we can slow down time. And the spirits in the codification and in their books, in their information, they bring us this idea that time in the spiritual world is different from time here on earth. The idea, the notion of time is very different. But they also bring the idea, especially Andre Luiz and Emmanuel, that it is very important for us to use our time very well, to not lose time to evolution. So we keep this balance between not knowing what time is exactly and the importance of using it very well. And this idea that time is different in the spiritual world and on earth always is also is very important for us. I have been learning with the French astronomer Camille Flammarion some notions about time on his books, and it's very nice to read his books and understand how an astronomer sees time. For example, he tells us that one day on Earth, like 24 hours, or 1 year on Earth, 365 days, does not make sense in the universe, because this time, the way we measure time on Earth, it's based on the movement that Earth makes around itself and the movement that Earth makes around the sun. But if you go to another planet, you lose this reference because you are not on Earth anymore. So time is different. They count time different. So that helps us understand that how time is different in different parts of the universe. One day in another planet does not mean one day on Earth, because our reference is Earth and we are not on Earth anymore. So that makes a lot of sense and helps us understand how time is seen in a very different way. So a few years ago, there was this movie from Hollywood. In Portuguese, it's Perfume de Mulher. And in English, I believe it's A Woman's Scent, right? And there is this beautiful scene where Al Pacino's character is a blind man, and they are sitting in a restaurant waiting for dinner, and there is this beautiful lady, and she is alone. And suddenly the orchestra begins to play a tango, an Argentinian song, very beautiful. And he invites that beautiful lady to dance with him. And she responds to him that she answers that she can't because she's married and her husband will arrive at any minute. And then he returns to her. In 1 minute, you live a whole life. So that brings us this idea that how much we can do in 1 minute, how much we can do in 1 day, how much we can do in 1 year, how we can use our time to evolve, to learn, to do useful things for us and for others who are around us. So it's a very strong sentence, and we are going to use this sentence in our speech in order to understand some phenomena that happened in the cosmos, in the universe, that contribute to the evolution of the spirit from the beginning to perfectibility. So if we travel back 100 years ago, around 1920s, we didn't even know that the universe was made of a lot of galaxies. There was this debate, the great debate, in where some people, some scientists believe that the universe was made by many different galaxies. Another group of scientists believe that there was only one galaxy, the Milky Way. So they did not have instruments or knowledge to resolve this debate. And they actually had a debate face to face where Herbert Curtis defended the idea that the universe was made by many galaxies, and Harlow Shapley represented those that believed that the universe was made by only one galaxy, the Milky Way. And of course, the debate was a draw. Neither of them had enough information to conclude or to convince the others that the universe was made of many galaxies. And that's 100 years ago. That's in the history of mankind. That's a very tiny period of time. So it was yesterday, like yesterday. We didn't even know that. So we knew very little 100 years ago about the universe. But things change. Time was in action, time was passing, and maybe time goes forward, right? And new information came, and the debate could be solved, but it was solved in a very curious, in a very peculiar way. So we are people that we are not used to look at the sky at night and admire how beautiful the stars are, how beautiful galaxies are, comets, and all that stuff that we can see in the universe. Especially those who live in big cities, we forget to look at the sky, and even when we look, we can't see very much because there is so much light on big cities. But in the past, people used to look to the sky a lot, and we have a lot of citations of that beautiful act of looking to the sky in the Bible, in old books. So one day, Mr. Pickering, who was the director of the Harvard Observatory, he was very annoyed and very bothered by his colleagues who were working at the observatory doing astronomical observations. They were all men. And he was really irritated with them because they couldn't stop talking about nonsense, things that were not related to astronomy. And then he screamed to them that his maid, a lady that worked at his house, would be able to do a better job than those men because that lady was very focused. And to prove his point, he fired all those men. And then he hired a group of women who were led by this maid. And one of those women was a deaf lady called Henrietta Leavitt. She couldn't hear very well, and because of that, she had developed a very good sight. She could see things very well, She could focus very well. And at that time, Mr. Pickering was taking pictures of the stars and mapping the sky. And Henrietta Leavitt's job was to compare how bright those stars were. But since she was very trained on visual observation, she began to realize that sometimes the same star had different brightness. Sometimes those stars were brighter, and sometimes the same star was less bright. So she began to realize that an intrinsic mechanism inside those stars was responsible for this alteration, these modifications. And today we have the explanation for that. I will not go into that because that's not our point, but uh, today we understand that. And those stars that oscillate the brightness, they are called Cepheid stars. And by observing Cepheid stars, she developed a mathematical equation based on the duration of the brightness and the intensity of the brightness were from Earth. So she could predict distances, and that was very important to solve the great debate: one galaxy versus multiple galaxies. And then one day they identified a Cepheid star on the Great Magellanic Cloud, with it a small galaxy. Now we know that it's a small galaxy very close to the Milky Way, but in the past they believed it was a nebula, not a galaxy. But she identified this Cepheid, and she was able to calculate the distance, and the distance was 1 million light years. So this could not be inside the Milky Way. It was too far away. So based on that, the great debate was solved. And using Henrietta Leavitt's work, Edwin Hubble, the famous American astronomer, was able to calculate how far other galaxies were from Earth. And using a method called Doppler, the Doppler effect, Hubble was able to understand that those galaxies were moving away from our galaxies. And that was not all. He also realized that they were accelerating. They were getting further away and faster and faster. So that brought the idea that the universe was expanding. And that idea was used by a Catholic priest who was also an astrophysicist, to imagine that if the universe is expanding, if he could bring time backwards, one day everything was together in a single point, in a singularity. And that's how the idea of the Big Bang came to life. Moving time backwards based on Henrietta Leavitt's work, Hubble works, and now we have this idea that everything began in a moment of time. What time? We don't know yet. If we move backwards, we know that physics understands what happened until a moment that we call Planck's time, in honor of Max Planck, who was the physicist who determined that moment of time. And that moment of time, that point of time, is 10 to the minus 47 seconds. So we cannot even imagine what that is. It's 0,04701 seconds. Because before that moment, the laws of physics did not exist. and nobody knows what existed before that. And that's how we understand today that the universe began. And the temperatures were so high in that singularity that it could not hold together, and it began to expand. And on the beginning, it came to be matter and antimatter, and we don't know how it came to be. And it's very interesting that for 1 billion parts of matter, there was 1 billion part of antimatter minus 1. See? 1 billion part of matter compared with 1 billion parts of antimatter minus 1. Because when matter meets antimatter, they do not exist anymore. They disappear. But this 1 unit of matter more in each billion parts made all the universe we know. And that, I think that's amazing. I think that's something that we should stop and think why it was in that way. And those quarks, we're talking about quarks here. It's not even protons or electrons or neutrons. We're talking about quarks, matter and antimatter, quarks and antiquarks. They become to join together, and they, as the universe expanded and cooled down little by little, they were able to form protons of hydrogen and helium and a little bit of lithium, the three primary atoms that were made during the Big Bang, the Great Expansion. All the other atoms that we know on the periodic chart of elements were forged in the heart of stars. All the other ones. Only hydrogen, helium, and lithium were formed in the beginning of time. So when we say that the iron that is inside your blood cells, come from a star, and the iron that is on another blood cell of your body comes from another star, that's absolutely true. They were forged in the heart of stars, and that's really emotional. That is really beautiful, and in my vision, this idea brings us closer to the creation, to the creator, and to God. So it is very important for us to visit Kardec's work. And we find this chapter 6 of Genesis. I forgot to translate the title, so excuse me for that. Genesis chapter 6, General Uranography. It's a work written by Galileo Galilei, the astronomer, by Camille Flammarion as medium, channeling the information from Galileo. And there, Galileo tells us that now, at some point in the universe, lost among the myriads of worlds, the cosmic matter condenses into the form of a huge nebula. This nebula is animated by the universal laws that govern matter. In virtue of this law, most notably the molecular force of attraction, it takes the shape of a spheroid, the only one that a mass of matter isolated in space can assume. The circular movement produced by strictly equal gravity of all the molecular zones toward the center soon modifies the primitive sphere to lead it, movement by movement, to the lenticular shape. We speak of the nebula as a whole. So what Galileo is describing here is the process of formation of galaxies that science realized in the 20th century. And this book was written in 1868. So it's pretty impressive that those information came from Camille Flammarion and Galileo Galilei many years, many decades before. And it also describes the process of formation of stars. Gases from the Big Bang, they condense, they move in a circular way because of the physics laws of attraction, and they form a circular structure. So Earth is not flat, it's a sphere. Stars are spheres. So it's very interesting that this knowledge comes from Spiritism decades before we even know that the universe was made by many galaxies, which came to be known in 1925 with the Great Debate solution. So it's very impressive, and it amazes me every time I read this. So Galileo continues to describe the process of formation of planets, that it's exactly what science says nowadays. Thus, planets are formed from masses of condensed matter that has not yet solidified, detached from the central mass by the action of centrifugal force, and by virtue of the laws of movement. Taking on a spheroid shape is more elliptical or less so, depending on the degree of fluidity they have retained. One of those planets will be Earth, which before being cooled off and covered with a solid crust, will give birth to the moon, to the same process of astral formation to which it owes its own existence. A new, I can't see a new string. Can you just can you put it in full screen? Something is in front. Um, a new string in the infinite harp that must resound in its place in the universal concert of the worlds. So, what Galileo is saying here is that Earth is a new string in the infinite harp that must resound in its place in the universe concert of the worlds. It's a poetic form to say that Earth is a string. It's one more part of the whole, one more part of the creation. And like Earth, there are a lot of other planets that were formed exactly this way, exactly the way physics tells us nowadays. So it's very beautiful to read this in Kardec's work because it brings us closer to science. And we believe that science is an instrument created by man that brings us closer and closer to truth. And truth means God. So I personally get very emotional when I read this because I realize I have a connection to everything. I have a connection to all this, and I feel myself closer to God and creation. So uh, I just get very emotional when I read this, and we realize that Kardec brought this information for us many decades before science was thinking about theories of planet formations and stellar formations and galaxies formation. So there is Earth, our home, our school, where we live, a planet like many others in the universe, an ordinary planet, but we love Earth. We think Earth is so beautiful, and we cannot even imagine how beautiful other planets could be. If Earth is this beautiful poor planet, imagine how other worlds are. So Andre Luiz, in the book Evolution in Two Worlds, I believe this is the correct translation. In the first part, chapter 1, when he's talking about cosmic fluid, he brings this information to us. Under the guidance of superior intelligences, atoms came together into immense hives. Hives is a new word for me. I learned this word doing this speech. So it has to do with bees, right? A collection of bees. So hive. Atoms come together into immense hives so that they transform into the dense nuclear mass from which the planets are sculpted, in whose bosom the celestial monads will find a suitable cradle for development. Cradle is also a new word for me. It's the it's where the baby sleeps, right? So what Andre Luiz is telling us here, he's telling us that the process of formation of planets brought us the possibility to bring to this planet celestial monads that were able to find a place to develop. what are the celestial monads? This is something I learned with our common friend, Dr. Irvenia Prada, which is a veterinarian in Brazil, and she studies that a lot. And one day I was talking to her about this. What are those celestial monads? And she is someone who studies this deeply. And she brought me an information that changed the way I looked at this. Celestial monads, it's nothing more than intelligent principle. So when we say celestial monads, we are talking about intelligent principles. We are going to talk more about intelligent principles soon, but just keep this information in your mind right now. So the process of formation of planets brought the possibility that intelligent principles could come here and develop from atom to archangel, as we're going to see. So there is this idea that a continuous evolutive process exists. There is a beginning, there is a road, and there is a destination. And this idea of continuous evolutive process is intricated, is deeply merged in many spirit books. We can read about that in many books. The Spirit's book, Genesis, Evolution into Worlds, Genesis da Alma, the soul's Genesis, right? Anemic Evolution, A Caminho da Luz, Path to Light, is that it? The translation, maybe? Path to Light. So we can feel, we can read, we can learn about this continuous process of evolution on those works of On the Way to the Light, right? So, which comfort us a lot, because this brings the idea of evolution, and evolution is the real deal. We are looking at the process of evolution of the universe, and we are watching and learning that the evolution of those monads, those intelligent principles, they travel together side by side. It's one process, one kind of law that governs all the process of evolution in the universe. So the great Leon Denis, the Spiritist philosopher of the 19th century, in his book, The Problem of Being, Destiny, and Pain, I think that's the correct translation, and I did not translate the name because I was not sure, Life and Destiny, it's the English translation, Life and Destiny. He brings us this information. There is an evolution in all kingdoms of nature. In plants, intelligence sleeps. In animals, dreams. In mankind, wakes up, knows itself, possesses itself, and becomes conscient. So there is something that we believe is the intelligent principle that in plants sleeps, in animals dreams, and in mankind wakes up, knows itself, possesses itself, controls itself, and becomes conscient through a line of time, moving forward in a line of time. Century after century, on Earth way of counting time, century after century. But in other parts of the universe, this process moves forward as well, in their way of counting time. So, Andre Luiz, in the book Into the Greater World, chapter 3, where he brings the idea of our mental houses, different floors of our mentality, the first floor, the second floor, the third floor. He brings this idea of evolution of the soul. And he writes, the chrysalis of conscience, chrysalis is something that it's about to flourish. The chrysalis of consciousness which resides in the crystal rolling in the river current, is there in a libertatory process. The trees that sometimes stand hundreds of years old, enduring the blows of winter and comforted by the caress of spring, are conquering memory. So this intelligent principle is exercising, is learning memory. The female tiger, licking her newborn children, learns the rudiments of love, how to take care of the other, how to worry with the next of kin. The ape, scratching, organizes the faculty of speech. We're going to talk about speech in a few moments. From the amoeba in the warm sea water to man, we have been fighting, learning, and selecting options, ways, choices in order to make us perfect, closer to perfection, better beings, better human beings, better spirits. So this process takes time. It doesn't happen in one day. It takes fight, it takes effort, it takes a process of being wrong and being right, a process of selection. And the great Emmanuel, in the book In the Path of Life, right? On the way of light, on the way to the light, brings this information. The artists of spirituality designed the world of cells. Now we come to the cells, right? To organic life on Earth. So we told the story of the universe, the story of the process of formation of planets and galaxies. Now we are talking about the first biological life on our planet, on Earth. So the artists of spirituality designed the world of cells, beginning the instruction of organized intelligent forms. And by doing that, they used the ideal of beauty. They were concerned with beauty, not anatomical beauty, that as well, but functional beauty, something that could possibly brings us the chance to be successful as a principle, as an intelligent principle. The idea of beauty that brings us close to God. God is beauty in essence, and life is beauty in essence. So they were worried about the beauty of the physiological process, the biological process, the chemical process, and not exactly concerned about beauty of shapes. Which is a consequence, right? We think the human body is beautiful, the animals are beautiful, the plants are beautiful, the planet is beautiful. So we can see beauty in everything, right? And it is a concern of very good and elevated spirits to bring us this idea. It's not in vain that we cry when we see a very beautiful painting or we listen to a very beautiful song, because that represents God in essence, the beauty of the universe. So everything was done based on beauty. I guess my slides are not configured well. I don't know what happened, but we continue with Andre Luiz in Evolution in Two Worlds, right? When he begins to talk about the cells. So we discovered that cells are intelligent principles of rudimentary nature. So that's a very important information. Andre Luiz is telling us that our body, that our spirit is a intelligent principle that evolved. But he is also telling us that the cells that constitute our body are tiny intelligent principles of rudimentary natures, serving the intelligent principle at a nobler stage in superior animals and human beings, serving you, serving us, serving myself. So our cells are intelligent principles serving us, Look, our responsibility with those intelligent principles. We think of them, of microscopic life, with life of their own, and they are subordinated to our ideas, to our conscience, to our thoughts, and they function as a tiny animalcules that are domesticated. What is a domesticated animal? It's an animal that is able to live in peace with his owner, with his tutor. It can live in peace with human beings without aggression. So ourselves are domesticated intelligent principles in process of evolution, and we have responsibility to them. We need to impregnate them with love, with good energy, good thoughts, in order to them to evolve. If we do not do that, they respond backwards. They betray us, let's say like that. Let's put it in this way. They don't work very well. They don't function very well. So the process of evolution, the process of the intelligent principle to get mature, it begins in the rock, in the plant, in the cells, and it invades the animal kingdom, as we saw a couple of slides ago. So this is how everything works. Spirit's book, question 540. This is how everything works. How everything is linked in nature, from the primitive atom to the archangel, who also started out as an atom. This is an admirable law of harmony, which your timid spirit cannot yet grasp as a whole. This is what the spirits are telling us in the Spirit's book. It's all written there. It's because when we read it, we do not pay attention. We do not realize those things as a universal truth guided by this unbelievable law of harmony. It's a continuous in time. So, as this intelligent principle evolves, it needed different bodies, different organisms to develop its intellect, its moral aspects, love, the ability to love, to take care, in order to approach perfection. So, in Genesis, Kardec writes the hypothesis of the origins of the human body. The bodies of apes could very well have served as garments, clothes, right? For the first human spirits who were necessarily little advanced. It's the intelligent principle moving forward. For their incarnation on earth, these garments were more appropriate for their needs and more adequate for the exercise of their faculties than the body of any other animals. And then here we have a picture of Lucy, the Australopithecus, which is a genus that existed before the Homo genus, around 3.2 million years ago. Her skeleton was found almost complete and brought us some information. For example, from the how can I say cintura? From the tight, is that right? Tight? From tight up, waist. From the waist up, she looked more like an ape. But from the waist down, she looked more like a Homo, like a human. So it was kind of a transition. And there are others. This is just an example. But here, we could have some questions and some doubts about how can I say that? If this is actually a spirit or a pre-spiritual phase of the intelligent principle, because we do not believe in Spiritism that human spirits could incarnate in animal bodies. So, is this an animal? Is this an ape? Or is this a human body? And I just forgot the name. There's a name for that in Spiritism. The theory of when we incarnate in other animal bodies. Buddhism brings this to. I just don't remember right now, so it doesn't matter. So we have to research on Kardec's work to see if he's saying that human metempsychosis, right? I was with the word in my mind, but could remember. Thank you, Jusara. So is this metempsychosis? It could not be, because Spiritism cannot believe in that. So I was talking again with Dr. Ivenia about that, because this is something that has interested me a lot. I have taken classes and lessons on human evolution just to understand that the last few months. And Dr. Ivenia had already figured it out. She had already studied Kardec's work deeply, and she brought us the answer. It's because it's not human and it was not a spirit. And she found evidence of that in Kardec's work, because Kardec uses the expression infraprimitive human. He used this expression, infraprimitive human, used the body of apes in order to evolve. But the question that remains is, which one of these are actually considered human, even those that are already in the Homo genes. So we have in this picture Australopithecus, which is Lucy, we just saw. Then we have Homo habilis, which is the first Homo genus. Then we have Homo erectus. And then we have Homo neanderthalis. And then we have Homo sapiens. And we have other ones. Those are just a few examples. And they did not come one after another. There was a time in the planet that we had all 4 or 5 of them living together. This period of time that we live in is the only period in human history that there is only one species of Homo in the planet, which is us, Homo sapiens, because all other periods of time there were many different species of Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalis, living together and even reproducing among them. So which one is human? We can consider human. So Kardec brings us some information in Genesis chapter 11, hypothesis about origins of human body. It is probable that the first humans that appeared on the planet must have differed little from apes in outward appearance and undoubtedly also in intelligence. Is it intelligent principle or is it a spirit? So the Spirit's book brings a very interesting question, question 607. Then it would seem that the soul had been the intelligent principle of the lower beings of creation, correct? And the answer is, it is in those beings that the intelligent principle is developed, is gradually individualized, and is prepared for life. God, spirit, and matter, those are the 3 constituents of the universe. Spirit's book, question 27. What is spirit? Question 23. The intelligent principle of the universe. So, were we the intelligent principle that came from the bottle kingdoms? Probably, but we were so different. But so is the orange, the seed, and the orange tree. Anatomically speaking, they are very different. But the DNA, the essence is identical. They are the same being. So the orange seed is the same being as the orange tree. They are just in a different phase of evolution. So maybe, and this is a theory, we cannot affirm that, we don't know those details, because it's not allowed for us to invade this kind of information yet. We are not ready yet, but we can have an idea through the books from Spiritism and through science that evolution is a continuous process, and it involves the soul. It involves the intelligent principle. So when we became human exactly, we don't know exactly. Maybe it was in Homo erectus, because what we know is that in Evolution into Worlds, chapter 10, when Andre Luiz talks about continuous thoughts, that through the intermediary of words, through words, the speech, prompt exchange is ensured. Continuous thought is based in the brain, and through a similar wonder of the soul, the ideas fragments of consciousness in the animal kingdom are transformed into concepts and inquiries, translating desires and ideas. So maybe, and just maybe, this is a hypothesis, maybe we became human when we were able to talk, to vocalize, because at that point, our idea fragments became continuous thoughts. Andre Luiz teaches us that animals, they don't have continuous thoughts. They have fragments of thoughts, idea fragments. And maybe when we develop the ability to talk and to express our ideas in a continuous way, we became human, because we were able to communicate, to transform ideas, concepts, inquiries. And when that happened, we don't know, because all we have about Homo neanderthalis, Homo erectus, Homo habilis are skeletons. We don't have muscles. We don't have soft tissue information. We have bones. So we cannot say when they developed ability to speak. Many believe that this came after the Neanderthalis in the sapiens genome, in the sapiens species. It might be, it might not be, we don't know exactly. But it is a very slow transitional process, and here we are. We speak, we have continuous thoughts, and we are considered human. Many paleontologists and scientists specialized in human evolution believe that what defines humanity is the ability to create abstract ideas like art and like funerals, projecting in the future a something continuous, like expressing emotions in art, like paintings, decorations like necklaces, bracelets, and the ability to make funerals, to abstract, to see that there is something in essence that we don't see in real life. Because we don't find those characteristics in Neanderthalis and Erectus. Sometimes we read articles and papers where people think they found it. And I recommend a Netflix show that brings the idea that Homo naledi, a genus that was alive around 170,000 years ago, was able to make funerals. Very interesting. It was recommended by me, also by Dr. Irvania, and very interesting. Maybe humanity comes before sapiens, when we don't know, but just maybe, just theories and so on. So let's keep going, because we need to finish this talk, right? So when we compare the schools of all those, Cave of Bones, exactly, that's the Netflix show. Excellent, excellent recommendation. It's worth it. When we study the bones of those apes and other genu species, what we see is this difference. The frontal lobe, the frontal part of the skull, is growing bigger. And if you compare the first ones with our gorillas and other apes, we can see that our nose is moving backwards and our frontal lobe is moving forward. And that's a characteristics that the lobal front is developing, it's evolving, and it's bringing us the ability to make decisions, to connect with what is sacred, what is transcendent, to use our free will. So everything happens in the frontal lobe, as Andre Luiz teaches us in uh, into the greater world. So the word organ comes from the Greek word organon, and it means the translation is means, resource, instrument. So our brain is an instrument, it's an organ, it's a mean, it's a resource, is a sacred organ, a sacred instrument of manifestation of the mind, in transit from primitive animality to human spirituality. And that's the point. That's the point. Our brain, as we showed in the previous slide, is growing bigger because we are in the transit from primitive animality, as we learned from previous slides, to human spirituality. And it's probable, we don't know, that our body is still evolving. And maybe we will have a bigger frontal lobe in the future, and we will no longer be called human sapiens, Homo sapiens. Maybe we will call Homo futurus, or Homo divinus, or Homo cosmicus. We don't know. Or Homo spiritualitus. We don't know. But the fact is that with this developed instrument of ours, our brain, we will be able to execute and develop our intelligence more and more. And the spirits of more evolved beings will be able to incarnate in these evolved bodies, and they cannot do it perfectly right now because our body is just too gross, just too heavy, just too difficult. Maybe just theories based on spiritism and science. So this is our destination. This is a spirit that we look up to, because this is a spirit that took this journey from atom to archangel. And it's the whole model, it's the guide, it's the example that we should follow, and it's our destination in that journey that began in the beginning of time, and that we should uh, walk through step by step until we get what he taught us 2000 years ago. Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, studying this passage from Matthew 5:44, 46, and 48 brings us this idea that the essence of perfection is charity in its broadest sense, because it involves the practice of all virtue. So, in order to be perfect, we need to be uh, um, in resonance with charity in its broadest sense. Moral charity, material charity, forgiveness, doing to the others what we would like they do us. And we need to do it repetitive, with repetition, uh, time after time, because as this writer from my state here in Brazil, Cora Coralina, she brings us that word of repetition, because doing good is also learned. You can learn, you can practice being good. You can practice forgiveness. Nobody is born knowing how to be good or how to forgive, but you can learn by practice, by repetition. And for that, we need the others. We need the next of kin. We need our neighbor. There is this very beautiful book by Emmanuel called Mãos Unidas, United Hands. And there is a chapter named They, the others. They, the others, where Emmanuel brings us the importance of other people in our life. We do not evolve alone. We need others. We need others to support us. We need others to test us, and we need others in order to learn how to be cheerful, right? Uh, and this is the best way to go from atom to archangel. So I believe this is the last one to conclude evolution in two worlds. First part, chapter 1. Andre Luiz words to conclude. From atomic crystallizations and minerals, from virus and protoplasm, from bacteria and amoebas, from algae and plants, the spiritual principle sketched the skeletal structure, rehearsed the vascular and nervous system, conquered instinct and intelligence, penetrated the inaugural tracks of reason. Now I can't read because there is something in front. In the path for angelitude, from atom to archangel, from perfectibility to perfection. That's our destination. And I thank you for listening for me to me talking about this for 1 hour. I really get motivated about the subject. I recognize that. And I hope that I could transmit the message, the idea of how beautiful this journey from perfectibility to perfection it is, and also how hard, how we have to waste or to use time, millions and millions of years, in order to get through this journey uh, to conquer perfection and to get close to our evolution. So I thank you all for your attention, and I will give it back to João so we can conclude.
Thank you, Dr. Vicente. What a fascinating talk. I could continue listening to you for a very long time. I think this is such a fascinating subject, and I really enjoyed the subject and your approach and the different books that you bring to help us better understand. But we have some questions here, so let's move to the questions. That's from Violet. Thanks, Violet. Could the evolution that have appeared because of reproduction between primate and infrahuman species? So was there perhaps a need for the spirit to experience reproduction at a primitive level?
Well, I think evolution per se already existed since the beginning of time. It's a process, it's a law of nature. So it was not necessary for humans to mix with infrahuman species in order to evolution to happen. But what we know from scientific research, as I mentioned in my speak, is that many different genome of Homo were living on Earth at the same time. And for sure, they reproduced among them. And recent research shows that our DNA from sapiens, Homo sapiens, contains 4% DNA from Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalis, for example. So for sure, they breed between them, they reproduce between them. but it was not necessarily a need in order to evolution to happen. In my point of view, I think it was just a biological merge, but not necessarily something that was a need for evolution of our bodies and our spirits to happen.
Thanks. So next question from the TVC, International Spiritist Council. Can you talk a little bit about Camille Flammarion? I know that you gave a lecture about him for us here, but for those that never heard of him or know little about him, just quickly tell us who he was.
Well, Camille Flammarion was a French astronomer that lived in the 19th century, and he actually he passed away in 1925, already in the 20th century, and he was friends with Allan Kardec. And as a scientist, he used to study the sky. He was an astronomer and developed a lot of theories. And he had the main idea of bringing astronomical knowledge to regular people. He wrote many books about astronomy for regular people to understand astronomy because he believed that uh, astronomy was a path to God. The way we could understand astronomy was a way of understanding God's mind. And he also, as Allan Kardec's friend, he also believed in immortality and in the plurality of lives and plurality of worlds. And he wrote many books merging those ideas: astronomy with the idea of God, with idea of immortality, and with idea of the plurality of existence and habitable worlds, other planets.
Oh, inhabited worlds.
Inhabited worlds, yes. And this happened way before we even knew that there were another planets beyond the planets of our solar system. So he has a very big work, a lot of books, and few people read his books. So I really recommend people reading his books because they are extremely spiritual, extremely poetical, extremely philosophical, and very beautiful readings. So it's worth it.
And if someone that never read Camille want to start by one book, which book would you recommend?
I would recommend the two romances that he wrote, which are Urania and Stella, because it's a romance, it's a story where he puts and he brings his ideas about astronomy and spirituality and immortality in a story. And after that, I would recommend, in Portuguese, we call it Narrações do Infinito, but in English, I think it's Lumen, the story of a soul. Lumen, the story of a soul, which is a dialogue between a master and a student. And the master teaches the student things about life, the universe, about the spirit, and it's a very beautiful dialogue.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's important that we get we learn more and we read different authors. So from the U.S. Spiritist Federation, for those that are new to Spiritism, the concept of spiritual principle going through the kingdoms on its way to become a spirit is sometimes difficult to understand or even to accept. How can we explain it in an easier way, in a faster way, let's say?
Well, I agree with the question. It's a very difficult process to understand, and we don't have all the information. Even in Spirit's book and Genesis, we don't have complete information. We have idea. Maybe in the future, when humanity progresses and we get to after the transition from Earth, the Earth's transition to a better place, maybe we will be allowed to learn details about those things. But The point is, we have evidence in the Spirit's book that the intelligent principle one day will become a individuality. One day will become a spirit, but we don't know exactly how and when. Uh, so it's that kind of thing that Leon Denis brings us in his books, telling that it's like when the sun is going down. You cannot tell exactly the moment when it's night and when it's still day. It's a process of transition. So the same thing happens with the transition for the spirit, intelligent principle to the individualization as a conscience with a continuous thought. That we know. A spirit has a continuous thought. And animals from inferior kingdoms, they have fragment ideas that are fragmented, and they do not have continuous thoughts. But when that happens and how that happens, it's very hard for us to explain. Uh, for me personally, it makes sense. I'm not saying you were a dog or you were a cat or you were a dolphin. Uh, but that's what common sense tells us. A common sense in Spiritism theory tells us. But yeah, I agree, it's really hard to explain, and I don't have a full explanation for that to give you. So we have to evolve a little bit more to understand those things in details. And I'm very anxious. And when I pass away, when I deincarnate, I will ask our guides there, and if it's allowed, I will bring you this information in details in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah. I'm also very curious to learn more about it. The questions that come are always the same, right? So, was I a dog? Was I a cockroach? And it's difficult to explain. No, you went through the phase, but not individually as this. But we'll get there.
I recommend people to watch Dr. Irvenia Prada's speeches on YouTube. There is one where she talks about the bees, a community of bees, and she has those theories. She studied a lot the subject, and of course, it's a theory. She is developing these theories and these ideas. She's not saying it's true. That maybe, for example, insects, the intelligent principle is not individualized yet. Maybe it's something collective, and maybe they become an individual later on reptiles or mammals or whatever. We don't know yet. Well, actually, I'm really not very worried with it. I understand the process. I understand the idea. It makes sense to me. But what I can tell you is that does not change anything I think about Spiritism and about evolution of spirit. And what worries me is getting better, being a better person. That's when I do not understand something in Spiritism, I just humble myself with this conclusion: just get better, just be a better person today. That's your mission, that's your duty, and information will come one day. Maybe this century, next millennia, whatever. One day we will understand those things.
Excellent advice. Really, very good. Okay, so we have one last question. No, we have another one here from Violet. Could we be fragments of those forms of life?
I don't know. I would just mention that.
Yeah, I don't really understand the question to help you here.
Yeah, I think I understand the question. Maybe she's asking that we as spirits are fragments of many inferior forms of life that came together to become one. But we just mentioned that maybe it's a theory. We don't know when the intelligent principle gets individualized yet, but who knows?
Thanks. Okay, so last one here from the United States Spiritist Federation. As we are moving to a world of regeneration from a world of trials and atonements, can you speculate when did Earth move from the primitive world to a world of trials and atonements?
Well, I can speculate. We can speculate anything, right? Speculation is free. So
Yeah, and it is a speculation, right? So
yes, so I get a sense, an idea that that transition happened when we became to talk, when we became to use our thoughts as a continuous process. Uh, there are some fossils evidence in fossils that some of the primitive genus of Homo had a bone structure in the neck through which the nerves that go through our larynx passed, and we can speculate that some of this genus could talk at least a few words, but we are not sure because we don't have soft tissue examples of them. We have only bones, and these structural bones, they are very similar to ours, but we don't know yet. Uh, uh, Nobody can conclude that, but what I think, and it's my personal opinion, I want to make it clear, maybe this transition uh, happened when we begin to talk, because that's when I believe we had continuous thinking. But that's just speculation.
and again, it as all transitions, right? It took centuries. It didn't happen overnight, right? It's a
Yes,
transition.
there is a gray zone, right? The gray
Yeah,
area of transition, as always.
yeah. Okay, okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Vicente Pessoa. Thanks everyone that watched our today's talk and those that have been following our weekly Spiritist Talk series. Next Sunday, uh, October 14th at 11 a.m. Don't miss our next live with Gustavo Silveira. We will be discussing Jesus said, I am the way. And now I'm going to do our final prayer. We elevate our thoughts. We thank the spiritual benefactors for the opportunity of being here today, of having this blessing talk that enlightened us so much about our journey as eternal spirits on this planet that serves us as a home, that invites us to take good care of ourselves, of those around us, and of the environment we live in. We ask for the protection throughout the week, for the blessing for all those that are participating in this live, watching it now or later, that we may all be blessed with Jesus' protection, guidance, and assistance. Thankful for this wonderful opportunity. We ask permission to close our meeting today. So be it.